And there we go. We're live. Welcome, everyone, to another episode in our exploration of excellence, as we like to say. We call it Loser's Lunch. Last week, we went on a search for the biggest loser we could find, and we found him in Mark Maloney. This week, we went the other way. We went looking for one of the biggest winners we could find. And I've hinted I might want to do something called Winner's Dinner at some point. We trademarked it, so don't anybody try to steal it. But this week, we got Mike Kovary, AMS. He's won in golf, the silver putter at Forest Hill. He's won in mortgages, 25 years? 30 years?
AMS is now alive and kicking for 30 years this year. Celebrating our 30th anniversary.
30 years. And he's won in life. I mean, he's out there in the desert, on the beach. He's got the Sarge. Great kids.
Can't do it without the Sarge, Phil. Everybody needs a Sarge.
Everybody needs the Sarge. So welcome, Mike.
Phil, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
I always joke about this. Michael also always gives me a hard time because I talk about preparation. Yet I seem to always do this show sort of from the seat of my pants. The last few weeks, however, now while maybe the show itself we're riffing a little bit, but the guests have been pretty strategic the last few weeks. 2 weeks ago, and somebody that you've come to know and befriend, Bill Lyons from Griffin Funding, we were pretty strategic about having him on. There was stuff happening in the markets. And Bill and I always talk about the markets and sales, and we've done a lot of business since 16 together. Last week, we had Mark because he had just rolled out Core. And this week, and now some of this is a happy coincidence because Sam won yesterday. More about that in a minute, our connection in golf. But where I was strategic in wanting to have you on this week is really twofold. One, to really double down on my recent conversations about relationship in business. And I want to talk a little bit about that, both about our relationship in business, but some of the things you've been doing online and specifically on Facebook with your real estate relationships. But then also, with the PGA, coming up, there's some golf connections. And so I just thought that there were a lot of connections to have you on this week. I got Max barking in the background. I forgot to close my doors here. Let me send a text to close my doors, please. So we've been pretty strategic about our guests the last few weeks, and yours is no exception. The Yankees have been on a roll. Finally, they've taken their heads out of their asses. I know you're a huge Met fan, so neener, nonner. But the Mets are doing well. We might have a subway.
Mets are doing very well. Me and Maloney share the Mets, but before we get into that, we do need to talk about the New York Rangers last night.
There you go.
Overtime to move them to the next level. And before we go any further, we got to wish Maloney a happy birthday.
It is a happy birthday to Mark Maloney. The only reason why I don't forget Mark's birthday, other than the iPhone, which is a much wondrous thing. It plugs in. As soon as I know your birthday, I immediately plug it in so I can't forget. So now if I've forgotten your birthday, it means that I don't know your birthday, everyone. So what you do is you just let me know your birthday, casually, and then I plug you into the iPhone. But today's my anniversary. So,
well, there's a happy anniversary to you.
Yeah, there you go. So there's the subtle hint. So now if you guys out in the hinterland of the internet, the interweb, if now you know what my anniversary is, you could.
Well, we'll make sure we send your wife flowers then. Yeah. And I think everybody should right now DM you and give them their birthdays.
Yeah.
So at least you have everybody's birthday. You have no excuses.
There you go. Frank the Tank, Frankie Wholesale, January 8th, same as Elvis. So I will now know that. I'll plug that in. Yeah, so happy birthday to the Shark. 50 today, if I'm not mistaken. I think he and I discussed that last week. So I turned 50. Wow. I turned
welcome
50.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, I turned 50 in December. And now Mark turns 50 today. And David Bowie. Interesting. So I always start off with the market. So before we get any further, folks, as we say in our group chat, there's this, what is it? I think it's Ron Paul going, it's happening. It's happening, folks. I think for my money, and it was a little bit of a mixed bag this morning. I'm not going to say no, but for the most part, my takeaway from some of the Fed speak this morning, particularly Williams, was dovish. He talked about housing. He talked about the importance of the Fed's involvement in MBS. He also talked about, by the way, that how mortgage lenders, he thinks, aren't taking enough risk right now. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but there was a little bit of that. I think that I said 65% rates are going to be lower by July, August. I am still at that number. I might have even blipped up to 70. But this week, here's what's on the docket. Building permits and activity. Market PMI with an I, not an E, tomorrow. Richmond Fed, new home sales. Wednesday, we've got durables. I'm going to look at the CapEx. That'll be interesting. Because, by the way, and I don't want to, we'll go back to last week. PPI was weak, even though CPI was hot. Second print of GDP could really care less. There's very rarely any meaningful adjustments to the second and third print of GDP. Here's the other thing, just to digress for a second, folks. When I talked about three prints of GDP that are meaningful, because then we can, sort of codify a negative quarter in Q1. There's like literally a million prints. We just stopped looking after three. Pending home sales, KC Fed. Friday, we've got PCE, which to me is more important than CPI and PPI. So we're going to look at PCE, personal income, sentiment, early close in bonds for Memorial Day weekend. I'll probably be half drunk by then and passed out with 5 cheeseburgers. Who doesn't like a good barbecue on Memorial Day weekend? Probably won't be drunk, to be honest with you. And Dallas Fed. Last week, Mike, I talked about producer prices. Core missed. Year-over-year core missed. Headline came in on target. CPI was hot. So I talked about core for a second because some of this stuff is lagging, is a lagging indicator. I feel strongly that inflation can be a lagging indicator, and certainly consumer inflation can be a lagging indicator. So with the ISMs weakening, okay, and the producer prices missing while consumer prices were hot, what's in the tea leaves? What's happening? All of a sudden, more and more speak about an absolute reversal in the economy, okay, happening quick and fast. I have all these one-on-ones, people talking about housing weakening quickly, potentially. And that's just because kind of when it happens, it happens. It heats up quick. It slows down quick. What are you seeing out in your markets as far as, the scuttlebutt from your realtors? Are they worried, or are they just seeing the rumblings? What are you seeing out there?
Well, Phil, it comes down to you've got two style of realtors, just like you have two style of mortgage reps. Your loan officer, if you're a loan officer that got into the business in the last, from 2010 through 2021, all they've seen is a better market year in, year out. They haven't seen anything else. They haven't had to really worry about relationships as much because they've been doing leads and internet marketing and what have you. Some of the old school people like myself who've been around, we know those old school realtors. So the old school realtors, they're not worrying. They're not worrying at all. They've seen this market. They know what it means. They know that it means that instead of 2 or 4 hours in the office, they've got to spend 6 or 8 hours in the office. They've got to market a little bit more. They've got to reach out to past clients. I did a study with some of my people who are all experienced, and I found that most of them are getting somewhere between 35 and 40% client retention, which I thought was a great number because most mortgage reps are one and dones. We have all these CRMs and all this technology to keep us in face of customers, but we rarely do, which is, I guess, why we're worried about wholesalers stealing our clients. But if you're an old school mortgage rep or you want to be an old school mortgage rep, you're not really worried. You know that you're not going to make as much as you did last year, but you can come close. I mean, I've got a few guys who are crying. I've got a few mortgage reps right now who are actually doing better than they were doing last year. So, go figure. So, it really depends what your mindset is. If you got into this business thinking you didn't have to work, then yeah, you're having a hard time right now, whether you're a realtor or a mortgage loan officer.
Hey, dude, you said so much there. And so I really want to, and it sort of makes me think about this. There's some stuff that you and I have talked about recently. I want to talk about the wholesaler thing in a minute. Some of the conversations we've had. I've told the story about my conversation with Max, and that was impactful for a lot of people. I actually want to take it all the way back to 1996 with you in a minute too.
Please.
Okay.
Please,
and talk about the long game and stuff that you're doing on the internet right now for the long game. It
has to be the long game, Phil. You have no choice.
So to set that up, Jen. So we have we have Jennifer on the other side of the glass today, not Jenna. Jen, have you figured out how to post this chart for me? I stumbled across this on Facebook this weekend, folks, and Chuck Cowan posted it. I always give a shout out to the source. I think Jennifer is struggling a little bit with it. Are we getting it up? Or all right, so we might not get it up. So I'm going to read it, okay? Chuck Cowan posted, and he said, what if profits stayed low for 5 straight years? What would that look like? Here's the NBA performance reports for profits for 5 years, blah, 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 blah. 04, 15 basis points, 05, 19, 06, 23, 07, 11, 08, 13. Here's why this was impactful for me, Mike. And here's why you're the perfect fucking guest for this week. Here's why the story we're about to talk about is the perfect story. I mean, this all is fully aligned, okay? 2004, in my prior life, did more business. So I joined the company in 02. Company was never profitable for 2 years. We were profitable in Q4. We did more business in 03. We did more business in 04. We hit $1 billion in 05 and was the most profitable year for that company. I joined the company 16 loans, licensed as a broker in 1 state. We were licensed in 40 odd states, did $1 billion as a banker, made quadruple what we made in 04. Okay. They're saying 05 was a bad year. Okay. 07, great year. 08, our best year ever up to that point.
Hey, Phil, what were the interest rates in 08?
6.25.
Or higher.
Or higher.
Yeah.
Best year ever in 08. And then 09, Was the best year ever than that, was on pace for like a $6 billion year. Okay. Because we played the long game. So now let's talk about the long game for a second. Mike and I met in 1996.
Forest Hill.
Forest Hill Field Club, playing golf with Mark the Shark Maloney. Okay.
Tom Kelly.
Yeah, and Tom Kelly. Played a lot of golf together, really never talked too much business, if anything.
Nope.
There were a bunch of us mortgage guys in there, so we were, we were all retail. So
almost too many mortgage guys.
Yeah, we were retail, so there was really no opportunity to do business together. We talk about business, but didn't have a business relationship, had a golf relationship.
And for me at the time, Phil, Forest Hill was my place to go away from business.
Right.
So and I think everybody in our business needs a place to go away from business.
Right. 100%. And so then Mike moves out to California. We lose contact. 2014 March.
Yeah, you propositioned me in Atlantic City.
Atlantic
City. Very uncomfortable.
Atlantic City. Who goes strolling by our booth? We had just opened up wholesale. And Kerry Cole and I, and Kerry didn't know Mike, but Kerry Cole and I sitting in the booth. Hey, Mike, got to get, let's exchange cards, get signed up, whatever. Would you say it was 2 years before we got a loan from you? A year?
It wasn't quite that much. And I'm a little bit difficult at times with new accounts.
You're a pain in the ass.
Yeah, I'm a pain in the ass. Yeah. I mean, look, if you want to know how it is, ask me. If you don't want to know how it is, don't ask me, because I'm going to tell you. And that works to my advantage at times, and it works to my disadvantage. Look, the largest wholesale lender in the country, I don't think that I've had a an account executive stay with me more than 3 months. But that's why they don't get a lot of business. Kerry Cole, I sat back with Kerry, and I'm going to tell you, to this day, she's one of the 4 or 5 individuals that I will call if I've got a question, because I know she's going to give me the right answer. She's going to take the time to find the right answer. And we've grown to respect one another. And that's a relationship. That's not, an obligation. That's a relationship.
But there's so much to digress on. So let me continue the story here for a second. And so I help build the bridge to Kerry. Kerry solidifies it with follow-up and follow-through, working hand in hand with some of your LOs who sort of gave her a chance. And we started doing the 203K thing in 16, thinking out of the box after the Earl craze. So you're talking like late 16, early 17, something like that. Rolling up sleeves, long game, building business the hard way. Fast forward to sort of 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, EPM gets into the golf game. And that was something that was always a connection for us. And say, hey, Mike, hey, would you want to come do this? Would you want to come do that? And the relationship that we've now built, and by the way, returning the favor out at the American Express in the desert in January.
Relationships are two-way streets, Phil. Yeah. Not enough people know that on my side of the coin. They're two-way streets.
Two-way street. Built on honesty, integrity, to go back to you're picking up the phone to call Kerry or somebody picking up the phone to call you to get the straight guff. And then, look, you're talking about we used to play golf once, twice a week, maybe more back in the day. You live out in Cali, I'm here in Florida. Our relationship's better than ever.
You know what? I had a conversation. It was funny because I had a conversation with the coach, a couple, and I don't even, I don't even know what his last name is. Sometimes he's Scott, the coach, in my phone, I mean, it's just, he's the coach. And I said to him, I said, when Phil and I first met each other, we probably rubbed each other the wrong way. I said, Phil rubbed me the wrong way, and I'm sure I rubbed him the wrong way. I said, the funny part about it is, as we've gotten older, as we've matured, as we've seen, we've had a lot of mutual interests, and we've opened our minds to be able to learn from one another. The relationship has grown, and it's actually, you're right, we're better than we ever have been. And it's something I think anybody should look at. You need to open your mind.
26 years. If you want to talk about the long game, and I said this last week, and I always qualify this by saying I've never done a drug in my life, right? But from what I read and you hear and you understand, business is so much like drugs. No one does a drug saying, I know this is good for me. They want the quick fix. They want the quick high. They're willing to make the trade-off. Business oftentimes is no different. And that's what this show is about. Are you willing to eat loser's lunch? Are you willing to take near-term pain for long-term gain? Make the sacrifice. And, Kerry played the long game with you guys. It wasn't 26 years, but,
Yeah.
It was 6 months. It was 12 months. It was getting beat up. It was sticking to guns.
She certainly took from me and staff. She's taken a few body blows.
Yeah.
But you know what? She's dished them out too. And that's what gets you respect. Yeah. Especially when you're right.
Well, and that's the thing, dude, when you talk about, are you comfortable enough? This is the question that I want to ask the viewership. Are you comfortable enough to have an honest conversation with your partners, with your referral sources, to embrace that conflict? Are you, but it can't be rooted in bullshit. You have to come from honesty, integrity, okay? Competence. You're willing, to your point, you're willing to hear Kerry's, bullshit, or she's willing to hear your bullshit, because you both know that you know what you're talking about. It's the respect of like, hey, I might not agree 100%. You might be really, really giving it to me right now, but I know that you're not full of it.
And that's, and you know what? And it starts, look, if you're, it started, to me, I've always been one where it starts at home. And for the longest amount of time, I couldn't be. And I came to California. It was a conversation I had with the Sarge. And that's why, I'll defer, and she's smarter than me. But I remember coming home from the office in New Jersey and saying, I don't want to do this anymore. And I think she thought I was asking for a divorce. And it was more like, no, I just don't want to work for all the McMansions and all that other nonsense. I want to be happy. And she just went, well, let's just sell everything and let's just be happy. I mean, you can't have an honest conversation with your spouse to start off with. How are you going to do it at work? How are you going to be honest with yourself? And, it's one of those things where, look, we all make, we all tick our spouse off at one point or another, but you got to start there. And then you've got to be able to be honest with your family. And then you got to be honest with your workers and your coworkers. And then you can be honest with your wholesalers and say, hey, I really like when you do this, and I really don't like when you do that. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, which is why, you were, very generous with me last year as far as exposing me to things in golf that were phenomenal. And I was like, what's the first thing I remember when I signed up for the American Express, I go, I looked at Sarge, I go, Sarge, I got to bring Phil. And she looked at me, she goes, are you guys that close? I go, hey, I got to bring Phil. He's exposed me to a ton of golf. I got to do the same with him. I said, that's called a relationship. And she goes, no, you're absolutely correct. You do have to bring Phil. You have to bring him. And I was like, and we had a great time. We had an absolute great time.
We had an awesome time. And folks, here's the thing is, and then Mike introduced me to a broker, Robert, and this is how businesses grow organically. Okay. You put a bunch of smart people in a room, or a bunch of like-minded people in a room, or a bunch of people who genuinely enjoy each other's company. Or here's a novel idea. How about all of the above? That like each other, that are smart, that enjoy each other's company, that can collaborate. Great things happen.
The biggest mistake we make in our business, though, a lot of times, Phil, is that, people get together and they're on the same level playing field, and everybody wants to brag versus how do we, you and I last April, we played golf together down in Florida, and I picked your brain. I sat there and picked your brain while I was playing golf with you. Thoroughly enjoyed the course, but I enjoyed the conversation more. And I learned a lot. I came home and Sarge said to me, give her the report. And I gave Sarge the report. And she goes, you learned a lot. And I go, yeah. And by the way, we call her the Sarge. She's 5 foot tall, 90 some odd pounds, but she's got the respect of a Sarge. So
yeah,
we call her the Sarge.
You don't want to go toe to toe with the Sarge. So I want to talk about learning some stuff from you here. To just recap what we've talked about, that's important, is some highlights for some of the things that you said. All this hubbub about wholetailing and all this other stuff, and Mike hit the nail on the head. If you're doing what you need to do from a relationship standpoint, who cares, right? And Mike and I don't want to dwell on this one because I want to move on, but Mike and I had conversations about wholetailing, months back about, hey, we've got to sort of defend our book, but by the same token, we don't have our sights on you. It's like, hey, I get it. And we're going to do what we need to do from a relationship standpoint so that when you do pick up the phone, they do call us. And that's just called free enterprise, folks. The other thing that you talked about was picking a lane. So many times in business, we want to ride the middle, okay? If half the people don't like you, Mike, and half the people love you, I got news for you. Batting 500 makes you the best baseball player ever. I'll take it, right? Can't be all things to all people, folks. That's what Mike is talking about. And honesty. Honesty, credibility, that's the foundation of a relationship. Reliability, consideration. So to learn a little bit from you, one of the things that really has impressed me lately, in terms of, again, going back to the long game, all I see on your Facebook feed is listing. So you are sharing, publishing, whatever, listings from a bunch of realtors that I assume you have relationships with. Can you tell us a little bit about why, what was the inspiration, and what's going on with that?
Well, and it started, Phil, with some of my loan officers. That's where it really started. The loan officers were, hey, doom and gloom. Here comes 2008 again. There's no inventory. The world's coming to an end. Chicken Little, what have you. And I said to myself, and I did like you did. I read what was going on, and I'm like, rents are higher than they were last year. There's still more buyers than sellers. Eventually, there's going to be more sellers filling the void and getting to, towards a neutral position. I mean, that's eventually got to happen. Rates are still low. You now have real rates. The difference between inflation and what they're actually paying is actually in a negative position now. So, it makes it a little more affordable. They still have their $10,000. And with inflation, you're fixing your housing costs for 30 years. Something doesn't sit right here. This doesn't have the same earmarks as 2008. Now, again, things can change where it could, but as of right now, it doesn't. And I went, you know what? And I actually had one of my guys say, it's time to short the housing industry. And I mean, I literally was like, and I take all intelligent conversation, but that just wasn't intelligent in my opinion. And I said, you know what? The first thing I'm going to do is find out if there's listings. And I started searching listings, and realtors happen to like Facebook more than some of the other social media sites. So I started looking for listings. And I started in my backyard in Southern California, and there was a lot of listings. And Facebook, being as it is with the algorithms, they start giving you more. Some of them, obviously, I did with my own contacts or some of my people's contacts. And what's occurred was I went into other markets. I went into northern New Jersey. I went into Florida. I went into the Pittsburgh area. And there's listings everywhere. So my first thing was to tell my people, look, there's listings out there. And if there's listings, there's going to be sales. So what are you going to do to fight to get your part of the sales? Because they're going to happen. If there's more buyers than sellers, there's going to be sales. So we started with that to prove a point. Now what's happened is the realtors I have no relationship with are actually DMing me and saying, hey, thanks for sharing my post. And it's created relationships. And I'm sitting here going, this is like Mortgage 101. This isn't, how did it ever become an upper division class is beyond me. This is Mortgage 101. And what's occurred is that now some of my other loan officers are sharing listings, and we're sharing each other's listings, and we're creating value for realtors. And it really just started with me proving a point to my own sales force. If they're not going to do it themselves, I have to show them that there's business out there. You've got to fight to get it.
Wow. If there's a listing, if there's listings, there are going to be sales. If they're not going to do it, I'm going to show them how to do it. There's just so much in that. When you talk sort of about sales 101, prospecting and selling are two different things. So in my experience, most salespeople fail at the level of prospecting, not at the level of sales. Okay. I think, Mike, one of the failures of coming out of a boom, and particularly this boom as an example, salespeople didn't have to prospect. So they're missing the fact that in the absence of not having to prospect, that doesn't mean that there isn't business out there. That doesn't mean that you can't sell. It just means that you're not getting up to bat enough. To use my Yankees, who finally are playing to their
listen, I still don't want to see that shirt. Can you put something over that logo?
Not doing it. Not doing it.
Post it maybe?
No, not doing it. So, one,
Jeter was overrated.
Say again?
Jeter was overrated.
Look, I love Jeet. He was maybe overrated, but he was a winner. Winners can
never
be.
I already sent $5,000 to the guy who left him off the ballot. Just so you know.
Nice. I wouldn't put that past you. So first, one of the first rules in business is find a market that's underserved and serve it. Okay. Fill a need, if you will. And here we are. I can't tell you how many people belly aching that there's no business out there, that there aren't enough buyers, or there aren't enough listings, or there's not enough buyers and listings and buyers and sellers and buyers. And how do you put them together? And then you just go out there and boom, 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 boom. And it's listing after listing after listing, creating relationship after relationship after relationship. The other thing that I say, and folks, if you're a branch manager watching, if you're a business owner watching, if you're a sales manager watching, you'd be surprised how much you are remiss in not leading your people. Even the best of the best need a push sometimes. Even the best of the best can learn from each other sometimes. And Mike's sort of identifying, look, if these guys aren't going to do it, I'm going to do it, bootstrapping it. How often do we see businesses and business owners and operators not do that? Just let people die out on the vine, or worse yet, stick their head in the sand and not identify the problem. And it goes back to the thing that we've mentioned many, many times. 85% of the sales are made on the fifth phone call. We only make the fifth phone call 10 or 15% of the time. If I sat here and I said, there's no listings, the market's dead, there's no listings. Well, that's just because I'm sitting here saying that there's no listings, convincing myself and Max wherever he is. Mike's going out there and doing something about it, for Christ's sake.
And, one of the things that has helped me, and I think it would help a lot of people, especially your experienced people who are, feeling a little bit down, is you've got to get yourself an apprentice. You've got to get yourself a newbie. Now, I'm lucky enough to have my son, Max, who's decided to come in the business, who one of the first things I did, I knew he was going to Disney World. And I said, hey, I called up Phil and I said, hey, Phil, can you meet with him at lunch and give him a different perspective, not from his father? And he came home running through walls, right? He came back to work running through walls. And it was one of the best lunches he had. And it became something where he sits here and, now we have conversations and I'm like, this is how you do it. This is how you're supposed to do it. He turned on, we got somebody else who came into work who was working for lack of a better word. And I don't mean disrespect to these entities, but when I grew up in the business, if you didn't prospect, you were an order taker. My father-in-law owned a mortgage company and we would have sales meetings and he would say, if you're an order taker, what's the difference between you and the drive-through person at McDonald's? They're coming to the window. They're telling you what you want. You're not upselling them on anything. And I would tell, and I use that to a degree with this other new person, Mark, where I told Mark, I said, look, you're not learning where you are because you're working at a company that's, it's an order taker shop. And there's nothing wrong with that when business is great, but if they don't know where to get the business after there's no more orders to take, you have a problem and you won't learn. So now the two of them are sitting here and they formed a great bond. And the interesting part, the common denominator, like you and I, has been golf. They both met each other playing golf. We all met each other playing golf. And we've all learned from each other just by doing something we enjoy. And people can do that too.
As we wrap up here, we got a couple minutes to go. You touched on two common themes from the program. I think this is episode 38 or 39. We probably said it in 25 of the episodes. People want to be loved, accepted, and recognized. That common bond, whatever it might be, in our case, golf, right? It gives you a sense of, camaraderie, a sense of belonging, okay? Does that automatically check every box? Does that automatically make things easy and simple? No. What it's about is about respecting the process of life, the process of business. We're talking about the process of sales. It just lowers the barrier a little bit. Everything that you can do on a daily basis, right? Prepare a little bit, become a little bit more informed, surround yourself with better people, do business with the people you like, invest in your business, do the things that work more, stop doing the things that work less. No one of these things guarantees your success. When done in the aggregate is how success is achieved. The other thing that you talked about, Max maybe hearing me a little bit more than he heard you, and that's sort of like an age-old, we never listen to our parents until it's either.
That's why I told him. I said, and by the way, it really all started with the phone call on his birthday from Patrick Reed. I mean, what a quality individual that most people wouldn't have known. But when I sat there, I said, look, today's my son's birthday. Would you say happy birthday to him? And he goes, absolutely. Give me the phone. And, Patrick just got right on the phone, talked to him. And then he started talking to him like he goes, how old are you, buddy? And I'm like, okay, look, he's old. He's not like a 5-year-old, like one of the, and Patrick's going, no, you're old. He's younger than you, and it really was. And Max was like, I want to be exposed to more of this. I want to be, like this was something that really resonated with him. He was real happy, except when Patrick found out the next day, he's like, so, did he really enjoy his birthday? Was he still on cloud nine? I'm like, look, Patrick, he lives with his girlfriend. If he was thinking about you last night, we got a problem.
Oh boy.
And of course, him and Sam both laughed, and I'll tie in Sam because Sam, what a great guy, and so happy for the guy.
So before we get to that, and I want to close out with that, so where I was going with that was the Obi-Wan quote. Many of the truths that we cling to are dependent on a certain point of view. Sometimes you need a different voice. You need to say it in a slightly different way to get something to resonate, even though it's the same thing. So you bring up Sam Horsfield. One of our two, or really three, we have a young up-and-comer that we've sponsored for Q School and such. But in terms of the recognizable golfers, we have Patrick and we have Sam Horsfield, who won out in Belgium this week. He's on his way, probably already. I think he's already at Southern Hills in Tulsa. But his third DP World Tour victory, his girlfriend Izzy was on the bag because his caddy's mixed father, had a health issue, and just so happy for Sam. And did EPM and our entire family just so proud in how he gutted through it. Had an awesome Thursday, sort of treaded water Friday, Saturday, and sort of, outlasted everybody on Sunday. Just such a good kid. I think he could become the best golfer in the world someday. He has all the talent in the world and is so lovable, likable, affable. Couldn't be more proud of him. Major hats off to Sam Horsfield. And I know that you had the opportunity to meet and play with him. I mean,
what really stuck with me is that when I played with him, I guess he already won twice on the DP. And it was him and Patrick and me and you and Frank and I'm going to kick myself for not remembering the fourth.
I think Sandy was in your group. It was you, Frank.
Was Sandy that day? I thought Sandy was in the other group. Well, either way, it might have been Sandy. And he was a gentleman. You didn't feel uncomfortable. We talked about mutual things. We both had the luxury of playing Oakmont Country Club, and he was talking to me about that and how much he loved the place. And we were talking about putters, and he just so super down to earth. As a matter of fact, I didn't really even know who he was. And of course, my son Max saw a picture of him and he goes, "Hey, is that Sam Horsfield in the picture with you?" And I'm like, "Okay, you know him?" He goes, "Oh, he's a bomber." He did something this week that I saw that, kind of goes to business a little bit. We was on, I guess it was the 17th hole, and he hit his ball into some cabbage going into the green, some real heavy rough. And he had a lot of pressure. He was leading by one with 2 to go. And this is the first time he's ever played a tournament in front of people.
No, first time he's ever won. The other
one
two
with
wins,
a crowd.
Yeah,
one with a crowd.
The other
That's
two
correct.
wins were COVID.
Right.
No
so
crowds.
The time he had, there was a crowd there. And he wound up making birdie, and he wound up really doing well in that. But in our business, when we're hit with troubled times, we have to think about how some of our professional idols go, with golfers or whatever sport you're into. You watch them succeed and they bend. They never break. They'll hit a rough spot, but they bend, but they don't break. And I like to tell my people that, look, you're going to have a deal that blows up and it's not going to close because it just can't close. Okay. Bend, understand that happens, but maybe we can send that client into a different program or a different house or something else down the road. You've got to be able to bend and not break in this business. And I watched him do it, and it was inspiring to watch.
Awesome. And it's a great place to end it. Bend, don't break, folks. Mike?
Phil, as always, thank you. Thank you for the time. Enjoyed it. And, we'll catch up with each other soon.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thanks, brother. Everybody, next week, hopefully my finger's not broken anymore, and we'll come back with some blazing riffs.
I want to see you in some Royal and Orange.
Nice. Take care, everyone.
Take
Have
care,
a
Bill.
great week.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Mike.